Every day when we're on the road, people around us endanger themselves and others by using their phones while driving. They think they're hiding it, but we've all seen them and know exactly who they are. For instance, there's a sneak-a-peeker who darts their eyes between the road and their text. There's also the got a ticketer, looking upset because they just got a ticket for using their phone while driving. And what about the fast scroller who can't drive 5 minutes without updating their social media feeds? Or the night lighter who has that mysterious glow illuminating the inside of their car after dark. Do any of these sound familiar? If they remind you of yourself or someone you know, rethink your behavior before you find yourself becoming the fender benderer, the veering off the roader, or worst of all, the driver who killed someone. Put the phone away or pay. Paid for by NHTSA.
This episode is brought to you by Bumble. So, you want to find someone you're compatible with, specifically someone who's ready for a serious connection, totally open to having kids in the future, is a tall, rock-climbing Libra, and loves rom-coms with vegan pizzas on Tuesdays just as much as you do. Bumble knows that you know exactly what's right for you. So whatever it is you're looking for, Bumble's features can help you find it. Date now on Bumble.
Hello and welcome to the Publicly Challenged Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Oswald, and I hope you join me on my quest for knowledge to become a better public land hunter, angler, and forager. Stick with this and who knows, maybe we will learn something together. All right, so I'm sitting here and I am talking to Jason Holliday. Jason, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself for all the people listening that might not know who you are?
Yeah, that's probably a lot of people. No, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. So I'm Jason Holliday. I am the host of the Harvest Holiday podcast, which can be found pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'm just an Ohio guy, 45 years old, born and raised in Ohio. Grew up in a hunting family. No one really had to drag me out to hunt. It was one of those things where, just kind of born into it, I guess you could say. One of the stories I always like to tell is, growing up in the country, I was fortunate enough to be able to hop off the school bus as a kid in my school clothes and run through the front door, my school clothes, and then out the back door in my hunting clothes as a kid, and spent my youth and pretty much my entire life being in the woods and things like that. And kind of transitioned into this podcast because I like to talk to people like you, sharing stories and talking about my adventures, the good, bad, and the indifferent. And part of the reason why I started the Harvest Holiday podcast was back in 2016, I made the decision I wanted to, get into elk hunting. I turned 40 years old and was like, I need to do this. And it took me to 2019 to finally kind of get to that point. And what a journey it's been. It's been more than I could have ever asked for, really, in terms of the things that I've learned, the highs and the lows and everywhere in between, and the incredible people that I've met in this industry, and through social media and podcasts and things like that. And it's just been an incredible experience all the way around. And for the most part, that's it. I mean, for the boring professional side, my wife and I both work for a company that does like retirement planning and financial planning and insurances and things like that. The benefit of that is we get to kind of structure our own lives, which that wasn't always the case. As we were talking about before we got recording, I come from a factory background where I had to earn vacation time a week at a time, punching a time clock, mandatory overtime, weekends, shifts I didn't like. And, the only thing I ever wanted to do was just like go hunting, or spend time with my family and have just time, you know what I mean? And I traded a lot of time for money. And as we were talking, we had a really good conversation of that transition. In 2020, I had an opportunity to leave that career for a career that, afforded me more time, and the flexibility to do the things that my wife and I love to do. And, for me personally, just for me, that's that's spending as much time in the woods as possible. Unfortunately, I have a wife that does support that within reason, of course. I definitely had to make time for her, which I enjoy doing. But that in a nutshell is pretty much me.
So you mean you don't get to spend like 200 plus days a year out in the wilderness?
No. If I did, it'd be just me, dude. It would be just me.
Yeah.
I'm lucky to do what I get to do. That's for sure. I mean, I probably hunted whitetails. I probably got out 30 times or so. And that's not including like scouting trips in the late winter and spring. And, she goes mushroom hunting with me. We do, like looking for morels and things like that. We both have a taste for morel mushrooms. So that's something that we like to do together. But, all jokes aside, she does know that that's like who I am. That's kind of what she signed up for, in a way. But I try to be, kind of respectful of her time and things like that. And, we do stuff together as a couple, but she knows that, come September, it's kind of hard to wrangle me in. I take about half the month off to go out west, and then I'm home for a couple weeks, and then October rolls around, late October, and then I'm bouncing around to tree stands. But fortunately, my whitetail hunts are close to home, so I'm home for dinner most nights.
Nice. Yeah, I normally don't make the dinner, but the promise is most of the time, unless I kill something, I'm going to be home around bedtime. So being able to help tuck the kids in, or just at least just help wrangle them in, more than anything. But I try. Sometimes the further I travel away, it doesn't happen. But she's still pretty forgiving on that aspect of it. So I got to ask you though, like, are your plans to go out west somewhere this year? Did you draw a tag? You doing OTC? What are you doing?
That's funny you should mention that. So I applied for a tag out west this year out in Colorado. And because of the way I applied, I did not draw on my first choice. I applied for a preference point first, and then my second choice, which was a unit that was 100% draw odds for 0 points, which is what I had going in. And so I didn't draw that tag, and come to find out, and this kind of makes sense, is that, the 100% draw odds for like a 0 point unit with 100% chance of drawing is kind of predicated on you making that your first choice. And it's kind of based on last year's or previous year's draw statistics. So it's, even if you do make it your first choice, you're technically not guaranteed. I've watched just in the last couple of years, several over-the-counter units or 0 point units turn into draw units in just the state of Colorado. And I know it's changing a lot in other states, and I haven't really followed a lot of them. I just, from the chatter I hear on, online or whatever, some states are, what is it, like Idaho? I think just like they open up on December 1st to get their tags, and like, people crash the internet trying to get their tags, and it's kind of over in one day or whatever, where a couple of years ago you could just drive to Idaho and buy over the counter. And now it's just, the popularity of Western big game hunting is even in the short time that I've, when I took this on, when I started like, I'm going to go OTC, big game, elk, archery,
DIY.
I thought I was the only one going. I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't know everybody else had the same damn idea. Like if I'd have gone in 2006, it'd have been a different story, but I waited till, 2016 or, 2019 was the first year I went. And I was following some content for these other guys and stuff, and it looked like it was getting some popularity, but holy smokes, has it gotten popular. And so, to kind of answer your question in long form. So I did not draw on the first try. However, there were dozens of tags that got turned back in to this unit. And so I reapplied for Colorado's second draw, which was, as today's the 22nd as we're recording this, but I put in for the second draw. So I got like I said, there's like 5 or 6 dozen tags for this particular tag that got turned in. So I'm feeling pretty confident that I'm going to get this unit. My nephew, he's a Colorado resident. He actually drew the tag. So we got one guy with a tag and one guy without right now. So that's what we're kind of faced with. If I don't draw in the second draw, he's going to turn his tag in and we're going to go over the counter. But again, fingers crossed, I'm going to be out there, in a draw unit this year.
Yeah. I almost don't want to do the over the counter anymore. Because it's like anybody that doesn't get a draw unit. Now I know the dynamic's gonna change as more units become draw units. It's either gonna force more people to apply and ease up the pressure in some of those over the counter units, or it's just gonna make it worse. And we're gonna have to just kind of wait and see where that direction goes, because obviously, as we've seen, it could go either way, really. And I'm wondering though, like some of the units like in like southern Colorado and stuff like that I've kind of been around before, and they've recently become draw units. It's like, wondering if it's going to make it better, or if it's going to put pressure on some of them other units that are right next to it and either help it or make it worse or drive the elk into the draw unit. Like it's a weird dynamic that you're not going to know. I mean, if you look at it, like you were saying, Idaho, one of those states to where, like you said, 5 years ago, you probably could have drove over there, picked up an over-the-counter tag, hunted it. Same thing with Utah. Utah's changing. Like, I don't think there's going to be too much over-the-counter hunting at all anymore. It's kind of weird, but the cool part is like Kentucky. I don't know if you put in for that one, but it's $10, man. It's $10. Your odds of drawing are like nothing, but the fact that you could draw and like
for $10,
for $10, the amount of pressure that those elk see is like almost none. To where, I mean, they don't have pressure. They stay around. They're ginormous bulls. Like, somebody dropping like a 300 out in Colorado would be super stoked as an over the counter, DIY guy from the Midwest. But like, you got a real opportunity to drop in like a 400-inch bull. You know what I mean? In Kentucky or, in Pennsylvania or something like that's insane. Like that's crazy.
I got to do that. I need to do that because that's a lot closer of a drive than Colorado from Ohio. So I could do that in a weekend. So that'd be great.
I got a buddy.
Be back Sunday.
I got a buddy that lives out in Colorado, and he's like, I'm going to return the favor to all you Midwesterners. And he's like, I'm going to apply to every state that allows it in the Midwest, and I'm even going to apply to the East Coast to get back at all you guys too. So it's kind of funny, but good for him. Yeah. And hey, who knows? Maybe guys from out west will start traveling east as the herds grow and the numbers get bigger or whatever. That'd be cool. Ease up the pressure out there, whatever.
Yeah.
Let them drive around on the roads in Pennsylvania.
Let them ruin that state. But that's the thing with public land out there, though, because I thought the same thing. I'm like, man, I don't want to go over the counter. But the fact of the matter is, as much as it sounds pressured, there's still a lot of opportunity. I don't think people understand or fathom the scope of some of these units are just massive. Like we're talking hundreds of thousands of acres in a single over-the-counter unit. And, there's going to be a lot of trucks and stuff like that at the trailhead. And I saw it in the one unit I was hunting a couple of years ago that was over the counter. And looking at back and kind of in retrospect, it's like, if I'd have just put forth a little bit more effort, I think I could have gotten back in and just away from those crowds. I'm not saying you always have to go 5 miles deep or whatever, but in my opinion, I think a lot of guys probably don't make it past that 1.5 mile barrier, to kind of get back in there. And I just think there's a lot more opportunities in over the counter, but it is getting crowded. I've talked to some guys that, used to drive on old 2-tracks that they were the only ones that knew about, and now they're parking lots. Guys have found them and they've turned them into parking lots big enough to hold literally dozens of trailers and horse trailers. And, it's just kind of it's gotten popular. Everybody wants to do it. And so everyone's doing it right now. It's the DIY OTC solo backcountry, whatever thing. It's still very much a thing. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's like I was talking to somebody and they were telling me that they've hunted one of the units in Colorado almost every year consistently for the past 26 years. And they said they went back this year, and I don't know if it was because they're the unit that next to where they were hunting or something finally turned into a draw unit. And he said it was insanity. So he said he's going on a trip somewhere out west. I can't remember where. And on his way back, he's going to scout through a few units that he hadn't been to in probably 20 years that are still over the counter, just to try and find some new opportunities to hunt. Yeah. And he was telling me, like you said, a couple 2-tracks that they used to be on are now gravel roads, and turned into something to where anybody can get up them and no longer need a 4-wheel drive vehicle. And he said that's definitely changed the dynamic of that whole area. And he said, I mean, and the thing is, though, this guy's been hunting elk for that long, and he's got quite a bit of success under his belt. And he's told me, he's like, even in that area, he goes, I was still in elk. They were still bugling every morning. I had encounters. He said, I just passed on them because it wasn't what I wanted. I've been hunting for 26 years. It's not like it was, he said, if like it was me going with them, he goes, it'd be a completely different story. I guarantee you'd put down one of those elk. And he goes, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, any legal bull would be on the ground for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not there.
Yeah,
I'm not at that level. And I think that's one of the things, you know what I mean? Like that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand, or they make fun of or mock, they don't understand like what level people are at, and there's so many different aspects to hunting. And it's kind of crazy because it makes me think of another thing that, like the divisiveness of like trad bow hunters versus, or just
compound.
even like, certain groups or clubs that, even though they are doing great things for the hunting world and pushing for certain legislation, but at the same time, they're pushing for legislation to ban certain things, and get rid of crossbows or make separate seasons for crossbows or make them the same time as muzzleloaders. And it's like, those people have every right to be there just like you do. And if they're really changing the dynamic of the game so much, like some people claim, it's, you got a 6-year-old that once you get that crossbow sighted in, now they can kill an elk. Well, good for that 6-year-old that they get that opportunity. You know what I mean? They still got to put in the work to get back there and get on that animal. It's no different,
Yeah,
and
it's
so
not a
people,
guarantee,
so people try and say that or try and make it that point to make it valid, and it's just like, leave it alone, man.
Yeah, there's good and bad to all of that. I've got my opinions on the crossbow thing, but I've got friends and family that hunt with them, so when we get into deer camp, that's what they have. And, other than just the general ribbing, that people get for, lazy crossbow hunters or whatever, I'm not the type of person that, puts a lot into it. It's kind of like a Ford versus Chevy kind of thing. Like,
Right.
I don't get really big into I understand like the rivalry part of certain aspects, but I also understand that it can get really ugly, and that's going to be the detriment to hunting more than anything. There's a point to be made for, well, if we, in Ohio, crossbows are legal. If we just got rid of crossbows, then maybe, we'd eliminate certain problems, but, the deer herd would get better. But yeah, it would. But, it's getting to the point now where deer numbers are going down. So they say. So some of the reports are saying CWD is kind of on the rise, even in, near where I live, which is scary. I think it all depends. It's all the person behind the weapon, honestly, how they were raised, the ethics, the morals. Like I said, I have friends and family that hunt with crossbows and muzzleloaders and rifles and all of that. And at the end of the day, if you're following the game laws and you're hunting respectfully, and responsibly, and you're taking care of the land as you walk in and as you walk out, then, I'm with you. That's kind of the way I was raised. We're always going to, like I said, we're always going to have those little rivalries of brands and things like that. And that's fine. But I think it's gotten really out of hand with the bickering about this brand of camo versus that brand of camo and just like fighting over it, bow brand versus bow brand, packs, backpack brand this and backpack brand that, fighting over. Yeah, Jesus, man. It's like, and it's like when I first started doing this, hell, ever since I was a kid, I'm 45. So, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be in the hunting industry. I used to film my own hunts with a VHS recorder. I've got a ton of old footage, and I used to talk to the camera, you know what I mean, do all that kind of thing. And, we all wanted that. Anybody that grows up hunting that doesn't want their own show is a liar. Everybody wants to have like their own show or whatever. Right. And now we've got phones, and we can just like walk around and do like these videos, and it's cool. But the more I with the podcast, especially, that was a big eye opener when you get into the industry. And I'm not in the industry by any stretch, but I've got more access than the average guy, and I'm sure you can relate to that. You've got more access to influencers, quote influencers, of people of influence within the hunting industry, more so than just the regular guy sending them a DM, and have these conversations. And you start to see in the industry and realize a couple of things. One that I've realized is, especially when I used to race off-road quite a bit, the similarities of the off-road racing industry and the hunting industry are that once you're in it for a while, it gets really, really small.
It's a lot smaller than you think.
And it's a lot smaller than you think. Everybody knows everybody. Even the competing, pack companies and camo companies, there's reps from each of those companies that have dinner together. There's reps from those opposing companies and salesmen or people that hunt together, and when you go in bashing one company to another, it's like, hey, you're bashing that guy's friend, and they talk, next thing you know, you're blacklisted off the entire, and it's funny, some of the stories I've heard, and I won't mention names. The best podcasts, I always say, are the ones that happen after the stop button gets hit. But
as well as I do, that is true.
The best podcasts are the ones that you'll never hear, Timmy. But so and I realized that I don't want to be in the hunting industry whatsoever. I've gotten some cool, I've met some cool people, and with the podcast, there's been some gear come my way, which I'm super thankful for, and some opportunities and things like that. But the big, ROI for me is helping people. I just did a podcast a couple hours ago with a young man from Michigan that's, doesn't have any, he doesn't have any mentors. He's in his 20s, early 20s, and he's a brand new hunter all around. He didn't grow up in any kind of hunting family at all. And so to be able to talk with him and hear his questions, and how, like, all his questions are like brand new first. Everything's a first for him, and I find that very appealing to me as someone that's, grew up in it, So my thing right now at 45 is like just trying to help somebody out, with the podcast. It's just trying to put out information, even if that price I'm paying right now is, with my Western hunts over the last few years, I haven't killed an elk yet, and I've failed a lot. I've come off the mountain early. I went out there with a big head thinking I'm going to be Captain Solo Hunter. And then I end up like, getting out there in day 2, and I'm like, I miss my wife. You know what I mean?
I'm not saying I love my wife, but I haven't had those feelings, but I've had a hunting partner who has, and it's changed. It changed the dynamic, and he wasn't at the same level. He was not at the same level I was as far as the outdoors. He may have done his research more, but there just wasn't that edge that he needed to be out there long enough. And that definitely changes things,
absolutely.
To where I see where you're coming from. I witnessed it firsthand. We ended up calling my hunt 2 days early because of that. And my wife was happy that I came home, but at the same time, it was like, man, what if I could have capitalized on the last 2 days? What if I wouldn't have went up that extra 2,000 feet in elevation right there where I said I was going to climb that hill, and drop down into that meadow? What could have happened? I don't know. I'll never know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It could have been a bust.
Right. Yeah. But
but at least you did it,
And that's one of the things that, when I first started doing this, I admit this on the podcast, just to like save somebody else from the frustration is, getting so wrapped up in gear and getting so wrapped up in the romanticism of this Western big game hunting, and, not thinking about like the mental aspect of it, because it is challenging. You are away from the wife, the kids, some of these people get so wrapped up in all the gear and stuff, they don't realize they've never even been away from home, and not to say that I've never been away from home, but never driven, halfway across the country by yourself, drive 1,500 miles one way and then go camp up in the middle, literally in the middle of a wilderness area, and then have the sun go down on you for the first time at night. And like, tell me that's not like
feels.
Oh, dude.
It gives me the good feels. It makes me want to be there right now.
Oh yeah. It's taken me a few years, and I've gotten to the point now where I'm like, I can't wait to leave. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like, I know, like, one of the bigger challenges I've had is, breaking away from that home life, or that anxiety of going back into their solo, into a place I've never been, and just like I said, those mental challenges that kind of like have talked me right out of the mountain due to, piss poor planning, not having a structured plan for the week, and just kind of like rambling around the mountain. The one year was more of like a hiking around with a bow on my back kind of a thing. And, that was a good lesson learned, because I just, I got, excuse me, super frustrated because I didn't have a plan. I didn't know where to go. So I'm just kind of like, got my hands in my pockets for like a few days. And I was like, yeah, nuts to this. I'm going home. You know what I mean? And then halfway, into Kansas, I'm like, where the hell am I going home?
Did you turn it around?
No, but I should have.
Man. See, that's where Mark Livesay, our friend Mark, comes in handy, right? The whole entire thing he's got, the Treeline Academy. That's no BS. Like, I mean, I remember when I reached out to him the first time, just reaching out to him, talking to him about how his YouTube videos, this is no BS. Hey man, I've watched your YouTube videos like 4 times. The content in there is just amazing. You've helped me change my whole idea of elk hunting, and like, I'm sure he loved, just like you said, you're just some guy putting stuff out there and somebody actually likes it, and you get that feedback. And I've got a few of those messages too. And it's like, I don't know who you are, but thank you. Like, thank you for saying that you like what I'm doing, what I'm putting out there, that I'm adding value to you. And that's cool. Like, that's a good feeling. So, I did the same thing with Mark. And, I found, I think it was the following season, I found his e-scouting course. Oh yeah. And when he talked about, he talks about a lot of stuff. It's an extensive your
course.
Hunt plan, knowing your limitations, right?
It's yeah. I was like, damn it, I didn't know my limitations. I like, hunt plan. What's a hunt plan? I didn't have a hunt. My plan was to go out there and hunt, but when you're out there for days, it's easy to, it's easy to let your mind wander and wander into the negative. And not having a structured plan for where we're going to go, a plan A, B, and C. If plan A doesn't work, plan B doesn't work, like, because you can rip through plan A and B in like a day and a half, and still have 4 days to go. And if you're not mentally in the game, you're tired, you say maybe you miss the family, or you haven't talked to anybody. I'm a social kind of a person, so it's like, I got to have some form of communications, at some point in time. And then the level of expectation of going back, like, everybody says they want to go back for 5 days or more, but after day 2 or 3, what I mean? That's one of those, like, gut check, reality checks. And that happened to me out there. That absolutely happened to me out there. That first year I went, I was just telling a guy, I've told this story in the podcast, where, I spent all this money on clothing and gear, went out and met a friend, a hunting partner, and he got really, really sick on the day before day 1, the night, we rolled into camp, got sick in the middle of the night. Long story short, he's like, I got to go. And he left, and we followed each other up. So I had my own truck, but he took off and said, I'm not coming back. After he got down in elevation, I don't know where he stayed or whatever, but he's like, I'm sorry, man, I'm not going to make it. So it turned into a solo hunt, and was not prepared for that.
Was it altitude
I don't know, man. I really don't know. Violently throwing up every hour on the hour, to the point where he just like, I gotta go. And and so I ended up turning into a solo hunt. I didn't have any kind of communication device. I spent all this money on gear and cool stuff that I thought I needed to have, a floorless shelter with a stove and, all this stuff. And then, expensive clothes, and didn't even have a communication device to message home. And like I said, when the sun went down on day one in the mountains by myself for the first time and it got dark, that was like the scariest shit. That was like the scariest thing. Yeah, because I'm like, oh, it's I got to get in my tent now.
Dark
and
tarp.
I got in there and I got my tarp, and I got the stove going and got the fire going. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. Because it was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. It was the first time, I hadn't slept in a tent since I was a kid, like 30 years prior, so there was like all these firsts that's like, I bought this mummy style sleeping bag, and never slept in one of those before. In fact, I didn't like it. When I got in there,
bags.
I'm like, I hate this thing. Why did I buy this? The stupidest thing ever. I like it now. Like, I'm totally used to it now. I could crawl in there right now and go to sleep in it. But that first year and a half, the first 2 years, really, I was like, why did I buy this thing? This is stupid. And, so I've gotten used to it. I got rid of the floorless shelter because floorless shelters are stupid. And because they let bugs in.
They do. Depends on the time of year you're hunting. I mean, if you're hunting in like winter, it's perfect. But, springtime, not the greatest. Plus, depending on what kind of grade you're on, you might be getting water rushing through your tent without a tub on it. So
or a squirrel dropping a deuce inside your sleeping bag.
That's okay.
Because
no big deal.
Yeah.
Squirrel.
It's just a squirrel.
I mean, shit, could have caught him and ate him, but
right. Yeah. This isn't alone.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, I don't know. I guess different strokes for different folks. But
yeah, that was one of the things too. It was 2020, I think. I got into I opened up my sleeping bag, and there was like mouse drop. I think it was a mouse. It was just droppings everywhere inside my sleeping bag, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" And then I ended up seeing him like an hour later, and it's like,
kill him.
Ants were crawling in my sleeping bag, like the big black carpenter ants.
Yeah.
I don't know if
it's not fire ants or a bullet ant, right? Like,
yeah, it could have been.
You got to count your blessings there.
Yeah, good.
That's a win. That's a win in my book. Carpenter ants, high in protein. No, not a lot of work. What do they call that? The people that eat the entomorphology, I think is what it's called. Hey, you got a campfire, just toast them up a little bit, crunch on them. You actually might be surprised at the taste that they give off. Might be a little fruitiness to them, like a raisin.
Yeah, somebody said they taste like lemon.
Maybe
those ants, if you bite them, they taste like lemon. But I'll take their word for it.
Perfect time.
I ended up selling that shelter. I ended up selling that as soon as I got home. I ended up selling it and taking that money that I got for the shelter and the stove, and ended up buying a really nice 2-man tent. And I haven't looked back since.
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by overpriced wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I heard that for a limited time, all Mint Mobile wireless plans are $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they sell wireless service online. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. To get this new customer offer, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
So, like, when I was in my teens, we used to camp out, like, all the time. There was, like, an island in the woods that we'd drive to. You'd have to drive through the creek to get there and just, like, set up and camp, big bonfires. And we never used tents. We would have, like, a piece of Visqueen and a couple blankets. We'd take rocks that were in the fire, bury them under the dirt, and, like, just put our blanket on top of that.
Oh, nice.
And lay on it and lay next to the fire. And I mean, most of the time we were drinking until almost the sun came up anyway, so it was only a few hours of sleep. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But I mean, there were times where it wasn't that much drinking, and it was just like sitting around the fire BSing, or kill a squirrel and eat it, whatever. Like just buddies doing cool wood stuff. But like I've come to realize that not everybody has done that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
had the hardest time when I got my first mummy bag. I'm like, this is too tight. I had to purposely buy another one, and I bought it, and it was like I used a discount card or something that somebody gave me, so I couldn't return it. So now I'm stuck with this sleeping bag that you either like sell it or you give it. I gave it to my wife. I'm like, here, babe, if you ever want to go camping, here's the sleeping bag. I bought you one. And then bought another one for myself, and like had to find out that like I don't really like the mummy style, but if you get a bigger one and it's an XL, you have more room in the footbed and different things like that to kind of like find workarounds. And then I'd never really slept in a tent that much either. Like I said, it was mostly outside, piece of visqueen over the top of you so you don't get the dew on you in the morning. You're not wet and just like get up and go. But tents are a different game too, and trying to figure out ventilation in the tent so you don't get the dew and your bag doesn't get wet, and don't letting stuff touch the sides of it. Like that's a whole new dynamic that I had to learn. And then to be honest, I've never winter camped. Like my first elk hunt was I think it was a second or third season, when it was real weird because the week before they got hammered with like, I don't know, a foot of snow, and then the sun came out and melted it all by the time I got there. So it was just like muddy and wet, but at night it was still dropped down into the 20s. Like, oh, wow. It was a strange dynamic. I mean, I was fine through it because I had a good sleeping bag. My hunting partner was not. He even brought 2 bags. And then at the end of it, and I remember telling my wife, like, man, he was always so cold at night and blah, blah, blah. And yes, he was from Texas. So like, obviously his blood was thinner than mine. But she goes, well, why didn't you just trade bags with him then? Because I was complaining the whole time about how my bag I was always so hot and I'd unzip it. And I always like, that's the workaround I actually learned though. And that's like a good learning experience for somebody else. You don't like a mummy bag? Take a whoopee with you. I take a whoopee with me and I unzip that mummy bag and I put the whoopee inside and like kick my leg out, and it keeps my leg warm enough with that whoopee, but it still keep me cool enough at the same time. So like, that's the workaround I found for having a mummy bag and having more room in it.
Yeah. I'm not a really big guy. So like the bag size works. I've just kind of learned to like roll around in it, to a certain extent. You know what I mean? It's like, how do you roll over in it? Well, you just roll over. That's all there is to it. But like I said, it's one of those things I just kind of got used to. But yeah, I sometimes find myself unzipped because I sleep hot.
Yeah.
I don't wear, even when it's cold, I don't wear a lot of layers. Some guys like will get into the bag with their clothes on. And it's like, can't do that. Like I can't wear socks.
I'm gonna be
and it's just September.
I have to sleep naked. I can't. Yeah. I can't. I get too hot. Like clothes. I don't know how people wear like a t-shirt and stuff to bed. Like that's too much.
Yeah.
It's too hot.
Yeah.
It's too hot.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same way. And in September, I mean, it does get cool out. So I'll throw like a beanie on my head just because my head will end up getting cold.
I always do that. I always do that. I always put a beanie on. But that was like one of the things we would do when we were sleeping outside. You put a beanie on your head, you got a couple blankets, you got the warm rocks underneath you. So now you're not like, you don't have that conduction side. The earth isn't sucking the heat out of your body because those warm rocks are in the ground heating it, like just things like that. And you got enough layers on top of you with, just 1 or 2 blankets and a piece of visqueen. But like, if you don't know, you don't know. And obviously you're going to bring a sleeping bag because you're not going to have guaranteed to have a fire. What if something, a snowstorm blows in and you can't have a fire? Well, how are you going to stay warm? You need that sleeping bag. You need that puffy layer in your backpack, and that's stuff you learn. But if you don't know, man, that's going to be a tough ride.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I'm learning. Like I said, I got to do a lot of that stuff when I was a kid, the Boy Scouts. And like you said, when I was a teenager, hanging with the guys, camping out behind mom and dad's place out in the woods or whatever. And, but as far as like that real experience, didn't really have that until just a couple of years ago. So it's like, geez, I'm just trying to get the there's so much to learn, and I was telling this guy on this other podcast that, the things I've learned that don't even really get talked about because there's so many layers to like this backpack style of hunting, more so than just, whitetail hunting here in the Midwest. There's so much logistics. There's so much planning. There's so many of these nuanced things that I didn't even think about that now I do. Like you said, like the taking the, the whoopee, as opposed to a mummy bag, or using it in conjunction with, so you can have that flexibility and, all these small things. I thought I needed a floorless shelter at the time. Then I realized I don't really need one. They're great. Like you said, they're great in the wintertime or October when it's cold and you can get a fire going. But I haven't really needed a fire in September in Colorado. I mean, it gets chilly at night, but you crawl into your sleeping bag and zip it up. And, once the sun comes up over the mountains, it's like 70 degrees again.
Yeah. It's
you know
what I
mean?
Strange thing. It's cool though. It's cool.
Yeah, definitely. So you've been doing this quite a bit longer than.
No, I've only had a couple trips out west, so it's not like I've been doing it longer than you. Just
gotcha. When was the first year you went out?
I think it was like 2018. So not. It was
I
think it was 2018. Yeah, so it was the year before you did. Southern Colorado, kind of cool place down there. San Juans are awesome mountains,
Yeah,
a lot of ground to cover. Yeah, a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, we were in the San Juans last year. That's a beautiful area down there. It's very, very rugged. It's very rugged.
Those topo lines look a lot different on a map than they do when you get there and you're staring up at them going, it was 2,000 feet, but what the heck is this? Like,
yeah. 200 feet isn't really like the 200 feet at home. Like, we just got to go up about 400 feet and there's water, and you get like 60 feet into it. And it's just like, if I have to step over one more of these damn telephone pole sized dead pine trees, because we were hunting this in a burn area, and it's just like a sea of it. There's like no getting around any of them, and it's just like mentally that like broke me. I was just like, you gotta be shitting me, but it was just one of those new things. And and we're prepared for it now. Like that was just an experience I had to have. We got into a lightning storm in July last year doing a scouting trip, and it was we were hiking. We hadn't even set up camp yet, and we were hiking. It was getting dark and the rains came, then it turned into hail, and next thing you know, lightning coming over the ridge, and we were safe and we got out unscathed. But it was just like one of those like firsts, that I hadn't experienced yet. And it was a little bit like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like just intense. Like we talk about it now and it's cool, like remember that lightning, but like at the time it's just like, dude, chuck your trekking poles because they might like conduct electricity.
Oh, you were out in it. Like you weren't in a shelter or anything. You were just got caught in it.
No, we actually were side hilling across this mountain trying to get to this other spot. And we found this flat spot on the map, but we had to drop down into this huge ditch, basically, this drainage come down. And we had to literally crawl out of that. Now it's starting to rain a little bit harder, but we could hear the lightning and the thunder in the distance. And we get up to this spot and it was literally like, now it's like raining. Neither one of us talked. We dropped our packs. We both just like, as fast as we could without talking, set up our tents. And by the time I was like zipping up and like getting in the tent, that's when the lightning was like, and I can't, it's like, we're in this like cathedral, you know what I mean? The mountain. Yeah. And it's if you've never been in the mountains with lightning, like really intense lightning, and hearing it, it's an experience that I can never, like, I've been in some way crazy lightning storms here in Ohio, and it's loud and it's bright or whatever, but like up there, like above 10,000 feet, when it just seems like it's so unfiltered. And then like the noise that bounces off the mountains is, like I've never heard or seen anything before or since. And it like, cause we get in the tent, and you probably relate to this. We get in the tent, and my nephew, Mike, he's like, "Hey man, are you okay?" And we're like yelling at each other. We're only like 8 feet away because it's like really loud out. And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You know what's funny?" Cause he was in the Marines. He's seen combat. He's been in some real like intense situations. Right. So he's been in some, this is not that stressful for him compared to like, and here I am just like kind of like lightweight freaking out. And he's like, "You know what's funny?" And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "How comfortable are you right now?" He's like, "Now that you're in the tent." And I'm like, "Surprisingly comfortable." He's like, "It's weird, isn't it? Like that little layer of fabric around you." He's like, "It feels like you're in your house right now, doesn't it?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's weird." He's like, "I know, man, it's crazy, but it's just like, it's like that. It's all in your head."
Yep.
Like once I got in my tent, I was like, "Oh, I'm not going to die anymore." even though I could have possibly died.
Yeah. The tent's not going to stop the electricity.
No, but there's that mental thing in your head. It's like, all I have to do is zip this door closed and I'm safe. Kind of like when the kid runs upstairs from the basement and he's got to like click the light off or whatever, it was kind of like, it was one of those things where it's like, once I was in the tent, the lightning was still go crazy. It was raining, but I was like, eating a cookie and I was okay, so it's like, there's like a mental aspect.
Isn't
to
that
it,
weird? Like
it is
how,
weird.
how we've disconnected ourselves so much from all of those things, those little tiny like nuance inconveniences or even semi-scary things. Like we've isolated ourselves so
Big
much
time.
that 90% of the population will probably never experience anything like that. Like that. Go through life not knowing that fear. And it just it boggles my mind. It's so crazy. Or even discomfort. Like people's air conditioner goes out and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna die." Like,
yeah.
What do you think they did 100 years ago?
Exactly.
Crazy.
We're so even now with cell phones. Like I said, I'm 45, so I obviously know life before cell phones. It's like, how did we get like commute? Like if I left the house 25 years ago, like no one was getting a hold of me until I got home. You know what I mean? And like maybe even if I was home, I was hopefully in the right room to answer the damn phone. Now this son of a bitch goes with me everywhere I go. It's in my pocket. It's a GPS unit. It's all these things. And if like the phone dies, it's like, rah! You freak out about it. And it's funny. It is funny. We laugh about it, but and a book that I read, it's called The Comfort Crisis. Have you read that yet?
Yeah, it's a good book.
Incredible book. And a lot. I told him when I had him on the show, I was like, because I got his book right before I left, and I should have just bought the audio version and listened to it on the way out to Colorado last year. That probably would have changed a lot of things because it just shed a lot of perspective on mental toughness and the games we play in our own minds, talking ourselves out of the mountain, like you said, because we just haven't experienced. And there's a lot of psychological, theories and scientific theories behind a lot of, chemical makeup. And he goes into a lot of really great detail and explaining some of that stuff with his research. And it really boils down to just being in your head. In fact, I had Kip Fulks on the show. He was the co-creator of Under Armour.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and this is an intense dude. If you've not followed him, he's very intense. He's one of the most driven individuals. Just when you talk to him, you can tell that this guy, zero bullshit, right? Just work ethic like crazy. No kind of BS, no excuses for anything. It's just go after it, get after it. And I kind of like shared with him, some of my challenges and basically kind of the way he brought it up was like, your mind is trying to kill you. Your mind is trying to like talk you off the mountain because it's scared. It wants your body to get in the truck and go home because that's where it's safe. So you can get those little endorphins to say, oh, I'm safe. That's why when people come off early or whatever, like it's terrible when you're on the mountain and you're like lonely, sad, you miss your old lady or whatever. And then when you get in the truck, you're like, crack open a Coke or whatever. And you're like, oh, okay. And that wasn't, or you go into town and get a cheeseburger and then you go back or whatever, which I've experienced both of those things. But it's like, it's funny because when you get to that point, like you're fine now. Like, where the hell were you half an hour ago? Like you were having like this little mini meltdown over there, but now you're back at the truck and you're fine. And like I said, Mike and I, I was really honest about some of those things. And I try to be on the podcast just because it's like, I know there's going to be a dude that's going to go out there this year and he's going to be just like me. He's going to go out there and he's going to expect all these things based on what YouTube showed him, and he's going to go out there and just get throttled in $2,000 worth of Sitka. And he's going to be like, damn it, I spent all this money on clothes and I just got like mentally beat down because this is an experience I've never had before. And I don't want that for anybody because the mountains are awesome. Like, I love it that much, and my time out there is very valuable, and the times that I bailed early, I'll never get those extra, like you said, I'll never get those extra days back. Who knows what would have happened if I had just grounded out for that 2 more days. Maybe I'd have connected on a bull. Maybe I'd just filled a tag with a cow, or you just don't know,
Yep.
and then you beat yourself up on the way home, which I'm telling you guys right now, the beating of yourself up and that feeling of like the disappointment in yourself is way greater than like the fear of like the dark or the loneliness of, you're missing your wife, which my wife is like, I didn't miss you at all. Like she's like, I was planning a party before you got home or whatever. But it's like you get back and like nothing changed, and stuff like that. Like your job's still there. Your family's doing just fine. They don't really miss you that much. And, you're cutting yourself short on an incredible opportunity by bailing. But there are so many different layers to this type of hunting. It's just, it's incredible. It's what keeps driving me back.
So one of the things you mentioned was the whole cell phone and like how people freak out and stuff. And you said you remember life before cell phones. Well, do you remember when roaming used to happen? So when my wife and I were first together and like even first married, she used to get super pissed off at me all the time. I mean, all the time. And is because I'd go somewhere, I'd just shut my cell phone off. So whether I was on a hog hunting trip or doing whatever it was that I was doing, I'd shut my phone off and nobody would hear from me until I got home or I was on the road home. Like, hey, I'm safe. I'm on my way home. I'll be home in 6-8 hours, whatever it is.
Yeah,
I used to do that, and then I think it was like around the time we had our first kid, and she was like, "You cannot just disappear anymore. Like, that's not your life. You have responsibilities. You're responsible for another life now." And she had that talk with me, and I was like, okay, don't be a stranger. So every time I walk out the door now, even if it's like for, a 2-day fishing trip or something, she's like, don't be a stranger. Every time she says that. And it's just a reminder of like the days of old when I used to I'd completely like go off the grid, drop off the face of the map. Nobody'd hear from me until it was time to come back. And, so it's kind of funny though, like she was telling me, she's like, well, how am I going to communicate with you when you're out there in Colorado, you're up on the mountain? Like, is it going to be like the old days? I'm just not going to hear from you. Now it's 10 days you're going to be gone instead of 5. Like, and so I started doing research and found an inReach and purchased an inReach. So like I had a way to keep in touch with her the whole time. And like I had that method, and it was something that was pretty cool. Like once I got it, I started playing with it. I'd go on a hike at home. I'd hit her a message, like, hey, I'm on the trailhead. And then just like hit her the message and she'd click on the map. And like once she realized like, hey, that text message you just sent me has a little thing. I can click on the link. I know exactly where you are. Like that changed the dynamic for me to give me more freedom to roam. And then, when I went out west, it was like a whole new story. Yeah. She knew she was going to hear from me twice a day, morning and night, and if she didn't, something was wrong. And that was kind of cool. So like
peace of mind goes a long way.
That was like one of the big hurdles that like I knew I had to overcome before leaving for that trip. And so I did that research and found that, and that was pretty neat to definitely do that, So I got to ask you, and I'll tell you mine first and then see like if you agree with me about like to any newer hunter that wants to do Western hunting, what would your advice be? And mine, as far as gear, don't go crazy and spend a bunch of stuff. Don't buy cheap stuff. Buy once, cry once. But the biggest things I think are finding a good pair of boots, a good pack, and a good sleeping bag. What's yours?
Yeah. It's going to be about the same, man. Like I said, I just got done doing almost this exact same podcast. So it's still fresh in my mind from like 2 hours ago. Boots, because you're going to wear them every day. Boots are an investment. When I talk to clients, I say there's spending money and there's investing money. Investing in a pair of boots because it's going to be on your feet all day, every day. Put the money in there. Like I said, buy once, cry once. And a good pair of socks, really, really high quality pair of socks. Packs are the same way. You're going to have a pack on your back every day. And if you're going to get into this type of hunting, especially when it comes to load out meat over miles, you want to have a pack that's going to be, reliable, something that fits you well, has been fitted to you appropriately, and to know how to wear a pack properly. But to spend the money invest that money in a good pack is definitely, invaluable. And yeah, a good sleep system. Yeah, to come back to the tent at night, or whatever shelter that you have, to be able to crawl into that sleeping bag with, maybe you like the mummy bag, cool, or just the regular style bag, or maybe it is just a whoopee on top of a pad of some sort, to have your sleep system dialed, I guess is, and everything else can get kind of pieced together. We can deep dive down the gear trail for sure, but clothing doesn't really matter that much. It really doesn't. I mean, it's good to pay attention to, synthetics versus cottons and things like that. Obviously, I think anybody listening to this probably knows enough to like not just wear denim jeans. Everyone's kind of looking into the technical fabrics and the technical clothing, but I go to Walmart right now and spend $20 on a pair of those Wrangler outdoor adventure pants.
I was going to ask you that.
Dude, I was just telling this guy a couple hours ago, I said, I called in the only bull that I've ever called in wearing a $20 pair of Wrangler adventure pants, baby.
So I found, I got to tell you this, because if you're a lover of the adventure pant, you have to check out Sam's Club has the Denali travel pant.
Oh, nice.
$12. It's the same pants. It's $12.
Kidding.
Legit. Like five colors. They got like a real dark. It's almost like a conifer, like a real dark green.
Yeah.
They've got like a real dark khaki, a lighter khaki, black, and I think like a real dark brown. But like lately, I've only seen two colors. It's like the black and the khaki. But either way, like $12 for a pair of pants. I bought them like just one pair, thinking like, well, let's check them out. I ended up going back. I went back there and bought like 6 or 7 pairs. I'm like, dude, this is insane. Like, no BS. They fit and feel just like the Prana freaking pants fit. Like whatever I can't remember what the Prana pant is. That's like the real,
Zion.
Yeah, the Zion pants. No BS. They feel just like them. The only difference is they have one less pocket.
Yeah. I said I did the same thing with the Wranglers. I bought the green pair. I tried them on. I'm like, I'm going back for the gray pair. And then I went back and I'm like, I got to buy 2 more pairs of each.
Yeah.
So I did. I got a pair that I own, like it's in my hunting box right under like, 2 pairs of Sitka pants. But I'm like, these I can never like do without these pants, because I still wear them hunting. I still wear them hiking and scouting and things. Like, don't get me wrong, I spent the money on the Sitka pants, so I own them now. So I'm not going to not wear them, right? Those are my primary pants to wear when I go out west, is the Sitka mountain pant. But I'll tell you right now,
won't come back on your show ever again if you don't. So I mean, let's be honest.
He'll scold the shit out of me. No, he would probably prefer that I just not have spent so much damn money right out of the gate. And that was one of the things that we did talk about one of the first times I had him on or whatever. But like I said, for $20, I like those pants a lot.
Yeah.
The gray ones are kind of like the traditional like hiker loose fit kind of pant, with like the dark green Wranglers are more of like that tapered fit. So if you like that kind of look, and like I said, I called an elk in with them, so they work. they work for calling in bulls. I could attest to.
So did Denim and Woolrich, but
yeah. Good. Touche.
And that's the thing.
Happy medium with the Wranglers.
I think people, and that's one of the biggest things about like social media, right? They see these guys that are light years ahead of them in their career, that especially if you get started later, you're never going to be to their level. You're just you're not. That's one of the things you have to accept. But then also accept that they're in a position to where people say, hey, will you please endorse my product? And it goes back to that whole hunting industry thing we kind of talked about and alluded to earlier. Yeah. Like, yeah, they're wearing it. They aren't paying what you're paying. You know what I mean? Like, that's your hard-earned money. You're Joe Whitetail from the Midwest working a 9 to 5 or whatever, punching that time clock. Like, maybe you should look at skill level and then look at clothing and always focus on the the important things first, like we said. those fundamental things that will definitely make or break you. And I'm going to tell you right now, a $12, $20, whatever pair of pants is going to kill an elk just the same as those denim jeans did, whatever. There's some technology definitely behind some of those more expensive clothing systems. Like, I mean, I've got Forloh, and I truly love it, but I'm going to tell you right now, I could kill just as many deer or whatever in a different pair of pants, but those pants do allow me to stay out longer. They do dry faster than some of the other ones. They keep my knees from getting beaten up on a tree when I'm wearing a saddle, but it's not stuff you have to have. It's just stuff that makes you, actually probably makes me a little bit softer, to be honest.
Right. Exactly. Put on that denim and that Wolverine shirt, boy. Yeah. No, I have this saying, I kind of developed as the first couple of elk seasons went by, was that the mountains don't care if you're wearing $2,000 worth of Sitka or, $100 worth of Walmart camo. It'll happily beat your ass in either outfit.
That's right.
Like fact, like you go out there in the denim and the Woolrich and get throttled, or you can go out there and looking like the Sitka catalog or the Kuiu catalog and get just as pounded. The mountain doesn't really give a shit. It doesn't. I found out the hard way, kids. Trust me. Like all that stuff is cool. And it wicks moisture. But when you go out there and realize you haven't worked out, your diet's not on point. You didn't check all the boxes mentally before you left the house and left work by, making sure things are square with the misses and things are square with work, and you're in the right headspace when you go out there. Like that, all that clothing is just going to make you look cool in all the selfies that you're going to take of yourself.
The hunting and selfies.
And it's just like, gosh darn it, So like I said, I've been preaching that, and I, like I said, I promote, products that I like, Sitka and Kafaru and things like that. But for the guy that just wants to get out there, man, I'm gonna promote. If you're if you're the Joe 9 to 5, and man, I've been there. I've had to work overtime just to be able to afford gear. Whether it was hunting gear or racing stuff or the 4-wheeler. I've had to give up Saturdays and Sundays, so I know how hard it is to be able to buy some of that higher end stuff. And I probably went a couple $1,000s over budget my first year of elk hunting it easily. Jesus, the floorless shelter was like $1,100.
My wife,
you know what I mean?
My wife looked at me and she goes, "How much more stuff do you need to buy for this hunt?" And I'm like,
"Oh, it's endless."
Well, just few things. And she's like, "Well, what's a few? How many thousands are you gonna have wrapped up into this?" And the truth of the matter is, one, you don't need half of it. You don't. Yeah. Like it's crazy. You could totally get by, and especially for the guy who thinks he's going to hike in the backcountry and he gets a mile deep and goes, "Well, man, I'm pretty tired. Like I'm just going to hunt here for a while and maybe glass this meadow, and well, I'm probably going to go back to the truck and camp." Well, guess what? You just eliminated 3/4 of that stuff you thought you needed because you can carry something that's twice as big and it can be in your truck. And you know what, man? My truck is outfitted for whatever right now, and it stays that way. Yeah. I've got drawers built into it that I built in a bed, and whether it be a whitetail hunt or whatever, like if I don't have to hike back somewhere and stay there, I'm sleeping in my truck and I know I'm going to be super comfortable.
Yeah, kids, if you don't have a cap for your truck, buy that first.
Yeah.
Try to thank me later. If you don't have, because I don't have a cap on mine. It's like, that's one of the things that.
Why do you not have a cap? That's like the one thing.
That's almost mandatory. I don't know.
Yeah. So like, I remember a time, and Midwest boy yourself, oh man, I'm going to buy a truck. You buy a truck. It comes with a cap because you bought it from somebody's grandpa or something, right? Yeah. What's the first thing you do? You rip that off. Right, well, I got to put 4-wheelers and dirt bikes in the back.
Yeah.
Why would I want a stupid cap? And then now you're to the point, and me and my buddy were talking about this. You reach a certain age and you would almost give your left nut for a certain type of hunting cap for your truck, right?
Yep. I'm there. I'm 45 years old, and I'm agreeing with everything because I had a 1988 Chevy Silverado single cab, no extended cab, with an 8-foot bed.
Sweet
and that thing
truck.
had one of the that thing had the cap. It was it was a maroon truck with a white cap. So the cap was the side that went up, and then it went up some more. like one of those big ass old
Yeah, so you don't hit your head on when you get inside of it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I ripped that son of a bitch right off, and it sat at mom and dad's barn it's probably still sitting there. But yeah, but I wanted 4-wheelers, and it didn't look cool. Even my wife was like, yeah, it's like a grandpa truck now, because she didn't want me to get a cab because it looked like a grandpa. I'm like, so when we drive around now, and caps have changed. So we drive around. I'm like, what do you think about that one? I'll point out a Silverado with a cap on it, and I'll be like, what about that one? And she'll give me like, yeah, that one's all right. That one's all right. She'll be seen in that truck. She's like, it's still a grandpa truck. Or I'm like, look at the grays in my beard. It's like, yeah, like you said, I've gotten to the point now where the next truck, when I upgrade, cap, like there's no, and it's gonna stay there because it's like I gotta be sleeping in that. There's so much more room for activities.
I've almost wanted to like
stepbrothers
pivot like even more, and and my friends, even my buddies that like I hunt with, make fun of me for this one. They're like, yeah, you get that, and I'm gonna put free candy on the side of it because I've been wanting to get a van, like not even necessarily like realistically, unless you go out west and you do go down some like 4-wheel drive roads, you don't really need the 4-wheel drive. So especially around here, like whitetail hunting and stuff, can you imagine having a van all set up with like a bed and back, a little sink, like a little heater inside?
My brother had one. He bought a van in like, it was like 2000. He traded in his Silverado that he had, and he bought I think it was like a 2000 Chevy van. It was like this really pretty green color, but it was just like 2 caption chairs. And I think it had a bench, but he could take the bench out. And we went up north Michigan, and salmon fish. And we lived out of the van we lived in a van down by the river, legitimately. Yeah, not even kidding. He's like, "Don, we're not going to buy a hotel, dude. I got a cooler. We got this air mattress. There's enough room for the two of us to sleep in this thing." And I'm like, okay, I can dig it. But I'd never owned one. But not like you said, now it's like I see these, you ever see those Sprinters? It's like a little tiny narrow van, like a lot of like the Amazon Prime guys use for deliveries or whatever. I look at those sometimes. I'm like, what kind of room you got in there? What kind of shelving could I put in there?
So here's my game plan, because like Amazon is going to be like going electric, going green, right? So they're going to get all these electric vans. You're going to have a surplus, all the used Amazon vans. So like my game plan is already to like start looking to poach one of them. And get one at an auction or whatever, and like totally pimp it out and turn it into ultimate like hunting van, because that's perfect. Like, then like you could even stealth camp. Like you could find like a gas station or like a Walmart parking lot somewhere near the public land. Just park it, have it to where it's got like blackout curtain dividing the cab from the van.
Oh,
like, I've already. I put a lot of time into thinking about that. So like when I get one, I've already got like the floor plan laid out.
I'm sure there's other guys that are already light years ahead of us.
Sure. I'm sure they are. Like, well, I mean, like Sam Soholt did that 4-wheel drive with like the Quigley conversion, but let's face it, man, those Quigley conversions are like, I think I reached out to him and like just trying to get a quote, because I found a van, like a decent van. And I think it was like $28,000 to do the 4-wheel drive conversion. So now you're, 15 or 20 something, maybe even 30 something into a van, and then have that expense on top of it. And then you're still building it out. My wife was like, you got a truck. It's just fine. The other thing I thought about is a Suburban. So when you lay down both rows of a Suburban.
Oh yeah,
dude. There is so much room in the back. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm thinking about. I was actually looking at these little teardrop campers. There's a company, I think they're in Tennessee or Kentucky. They're built for off-road. They've got the little stove or the, custom made. It's basically a king size bed, but you're just crawling in. You're not standing up doing nothing. It's like an outdoor kitchen, outdoor shower kind of a thing too. But those push upwards of $30,000. As well. I can't remember the name of the name of the company, but if
you're looking
cool
at that,
concepts.
So you can get a cargo trailer, like an enclosed trailer. And you just buy a different leaf kit for it and put a different axle on it, or not even a different axle. You can utilize the same axle, but a different leaf kit, and it's like a drop. So then you can put bigger tires on it, and it becomes bigger, more capable, and you put extra jacks on it. So then when you disconnect it from your vehicle, it'll still stay stabilized because now you have jacks on the front and back.
Oh, okay.
And there's a place called, I'm going to mess it up, Steel Fab or Fab House Campers, Steel Fab or something like that. And they're in Arizona, but like they make and ship their stuff, and they've got it to where if you've got E-Track in it, you could just clip their stuff in, and then if, say, you have to use it as a regular utility trailer, you pull their stuff out, use it as a trailer, and it's just like a big module that sets in there, and they've got like a fold-down bunk and stuff. I've been looking at some of those too, so
yeah,
there's some different options. Steelhouse Fab is the name of it.
Oh, okay.
They're pretty cool. They got some cool stuff going on.
So
one of these
options.
days, baby. I know.
Yeah,
well, Jason, man, it's been good. We could probably talk for hours. But I don't want to keep you forever. Got some stuff I got to do myself, so I appreciate it. Before we leave, though, can you kind of tell everybody where they can find you, how to reach out to you if they've got some questions, want to listen to your podcast, all that good stuff?
Yeah. First of all, thanks again for having me on. It was good to get a chance to meet you and chat with you about all this stuff. Yeah. So if people want to check out the Harvest Holiday podcast, it's Harvest Holiday. I spell it with 2 L's. So Holiday with 2 L's. That's how I spell my last name. Pretty much wherever. Same thing on Instagram. It's just Harvest Holiday Podcast on IG. Feel free to DM me questions. I'm on probably more than I should be on Instagram, honestly, to be totally truthful with you. But I'm happy to chat with anybody. Like I said, I'm just a regular dude trying to learn this stuff. I'm definitely not a know-it-all, but what I do know, I try to pass on to people, even if it's, my mistakes and my failures and things like that, challenges, and hopefully to make you, better on your first hunt or second hunt or whatever it might be. So that's what I'm about there. And pretty much, everything else is like my personal page is just Jason Holliday 545. But most of the podcast stuff is just on the podcast page. So yeah, hit me up.
All right. Thanks, man. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, anytime.
And once again, thank you so much for listening to the Publicly Challenged podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please subscribe on whatever platform it is you're listening to. Also, if you could leave a review, that would help us out. And you can check us out on Instagram or at publiclychallenged.com. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the show.